Metasurface64 is a PC application that allows real-time control of audio transformations using the mouse. This metasurface has its own audio track manager and a multi-effect processor. The application was developed in C++ on Linux and embeds libfaust for managing the sound. Communication between the metasurface, the plugins and the sequencers, Aldo and Reaper, is by the OSC protocol, Open Sound Control. Creating new sounds for acousmatic composition is relatively complex and time-consuming. The tools and plugins offered by the sequencers allow some people to work in real time, but their interfaces do not permit acting on several parameters at once. Audio editors like Audacity work in non-real time. It's not possible to continually listen to the results of modifications to the audio files. AudioMulch was one of the first PC applications to offer a metasurface for transforming sound continuously in real time. This tool showed itself to be particularly effective for creating new sounds. By combining this new concept of AudioMulch with the idea of commercial multipads like Novation Launchpad or Linstrument, I arrived at developing this Metasurface64. The 64 comes from the maximum number of tiles for this metasurface, which corresponds to the 64 audio channels that Reaper can manage. These multipads offer a set of buttons that allow MIDI events to be launched, and they are all configurable. Here is the startup screen for Metasurface64. The main window consists of a menu bar, a palette, and a space that will have the tiles. You can select one of the 12 proposed tilings, or you can create a new one. The tiling is created with a background image and a group of geometric shapes, polygons. Here, the polygons are called tiles or pads. For the next stage, we will choose the 3x3 tiling. It's possible to zoom with the mouse wheel to make the tiling bigger or smaller. You can move rapidly on the tiling by moving the cursor, which is available in the Tools palette, bottom left of the main window. It's also possible to change the size of the main window. Now we will create several mixers. An audio file can be associated with each tile, in which case it will be managed by the Metasurface Track Manager. If no file is defined, an audio input will be available in Jack. Each tile is activated by the creation of a mixer. The mixer can move continuously with the movement of the mouse or by a jump when clicking in the tile. A mixer's group can be changed by modifying its appearance. The mixers can be moved individually, in a group, or all at once. The type of movement is defined by selecting it in the Metasurface palette. In the case of group movement, only the mixers in the current group are moved. This visualization was necessary to specify the nature of the attributes that the DSP generator must take into account to create the code sent to the Forced library. Each tile has its own settings. When the metasurface is activated by clicking on a speaker, a generator is called which creates a character chain containing the DSP code. If it is the main window speaker, all the settings of the tiles are dealt with by the DSP generator. The DSP code is then sent to the Forced library. The create DSP factory from string function will create a GTK interface and the audio interface for Jack. If the tile calls a sequencer, obviously it is a sequencer that manages the audio, but the metasurface can control the plugins declared in the sequencer for the track linked to the tile. When the GTK interface is available, it is possible to control the gain of each tile with its associated mixer, also the selected settings of the plugins. There are two types of plugins associated with the tiles: internal ones managed by the metasurface and external ones managed by a sequencer. It is possible to define the plugins in the metasurface and the sequencer together. A mixer can only control one type of plugin at a time for a tile. According to the state of the tile's door setting, the metasurface's settings will either be dynamic, controlled by the mixer, or static, controlled only by the GTK interface. Only the selected settings of a plugin will be dynamically modified. Here you have a description of a tile's settings. The speaker, top right of this window, allows one to listen to the file that one wants to associate with the tile. At this point, the metasurface's mixer is inactive. The multi setting is important because it allows one to specify to the DSP generator if the audio output should be mono, a tile, a channel in jack, or multi-channel. In the second case, the number of channels in jack will correspond to the maximum number of audio channels defined in the tiles. This setting allows the size of the mixer to be regulated and only concerns the interface. The FX setting allows activation or not of the effects processor. It needs to be activated to be able to define plugins. It also allows immediate suspension of the effects processor for this tile without altering the defined settings and restarting it after if necessary. You can define the limits for modifying the gain. If you uncheck mixer gain, the tile's gain will no longer be dynamically modifiable by the mixer. On the other hand, the plugin settings remain modifiable. Here you have the DSP code generated for a simple read of an audio file. The audio file used has 6 channels, so in simple read it creates 6 outputs in jack. The GTK window attributes allow a cursor to be defined for the gain, a gate button, and 6 scales corresponding to the 6 channels of the audio file. Here we are using a modified, non-official version of sound files lib, which allows a progress bar during the file read. We will now define plugins for our tiles. You can select a plugin for each entry in the list. The order of the plugins is important, particularly in the case of external plugins, that the order of the sequence's plugins must be strictly identical to that defined here. The metasurface offers the same plugins in LV2 or VST format for the sequencers. Evidently, you can use the plugins proposed by your sequencer. You must define the limits of your external plugins yourself. The speed plugin is a bit special because it allows control of the speed of the tile's file read without adding a real plugin, as it's a track option. The mixer plugin is not dynamically controllable at the moment. To dynamically modify the settings with the mixers, you have to specify the setting concerned. In the pop-up window, you have to select the settings and the limits applied to it. The calculations are always done relative to the center of the tile. The closer the mixer gets to the center, the higher the value, and vice versa. Now, if you click on Rev in the Limits window, the calculation mode is inversed. If you change a tile's plugins list, you need to restart the DSP code generator so it takes your changes into account. On the other hand, you can change the limits of a plugin without necessarily restarting the generator. In this window, if you click on the speaker, you will get a test interface for the tile. If you move the mixer, you will hear the sound modifications and you can see the attributes change in the GTK interface. Here is the DSP code generated for a file with a single interface for all the audio files channels. Changing an attribute in GTK affects all the audio files channels. This tile has two plugins, a flanger and a reverb. On clicking on the channel option, we will have an independent interface for each channel. We can statically define the attribute values for each one by clicking on a tab in the GTK interface. If we move the mixer, it will calculate a common value for all the channels. If you want to save your ongoing work, you should save the output or outputs from Jack. This tool is particularly effective for creating new sounds that are very different from the originals. By clicking on the speaker in the main window, we can generate the interface for the whole tiling. The tabs correspond to the different tiles. We can modify the attributes of the plugins statically with GTK or dynamically with the mixers. Here are the free inputs available in Jack for connecting external mono sources. As the multi option is not checked, the outputs of the tiles are all mono, even if, for example, the file has 8 channels. As the tiling has 9 tiles, this gives us 9 channels in Jack for audio output. Configuration is much more complex if multi is selected. In the following example, we have added a granulated plugin and a reverb plugin in the second tile with a delay plugin in the fourth. We can now play with the mixers to listen to the sound transformations. One of the particularities of this metasurface is the ability to extend the list of available plugins. By clicking on New in the plugin menu, you will get this window. Creating a new plugin is done in 2 stages. 1, defining the forced code, and 2, defining the table of limits or attributes. You must give your plugin a name and specify which corresponding forced function to use, which can be different. Next, you must open the editor. Here it's Emacs. By clicking on New in the plugin menu, you will get this window. This will propose an example code which you should modify. The forced function name is that which is at the start of the code. Once finished, you can save your new plugin in Home metaSurface plugins with the extension .lib. You can also test your plugin by activating the Gram IDE. You should copy your code into this and add the line process equals _:, your function name, :_, You can see the diagram and test your plugin. This will propose an example code which you should modify. To build the attributes table, it is necessary to define the attributes order number, the name, the minimum value, the maximum value, and give the name of the forced function for this attribute. Next, you should click on the plus icon. Once finished, you can save your new plugin in Home metaSurface plugins with the extension .lib. You can add as many parameters as necessary by clicking on this icon. If you click on Validate in this window, the new plugin will be integrated into the list of available plugins. To create a new attribute table for an external plugin, you should tick the External option. You should define the attributes as for an internal plugin and validate. In this case, the function name is useless. Thank you for listening.